Welcome to Virtual Wednesdays. My name is Francesca D'Alessio, and I'm so glad you could join us tonight. Tonight's program is the final installation of a three-part Virtual Wednesday series about Ohlone history, culture, and land, presented in partnership with the Association of Ramaytush Ohlone and other Ohlone community leaders. Tonight, join Kanyon Sayers-Roods for a film screening and discussion of In the Land of My Ancestors, a documentary that celebrates the legacy of beloved Ohlone elder Anne Marie Sayers, who has devoted her life to preserving the stories and cultures of her Indigenous ancestors. Please join me in a warm welcome for Kanyon Sayers-Roods.
I can feel the ancestors dancing when they connect with the ceremonies that are taking place in Indian Canyon. We've always been here since the beginning of time. Today is the best time for an Ohlone person to be alive since contact, because the ancestral spirits are starting to wake a lot of people up. My name is Anne Marie Sayers. I live in Indian Canyon in Hollister, California, and it is the only federally recognized Indian country for 350 miles along coastal California. This is Ohlone territory, which extends from San Francisco to Big Sur, from the Pacific Ocean to the Mount Diablo Range. Between 1887 and 1905, 91 million acres of Indian-owned land disappeared for the people coming west. To say you were Indian was suicidal. And when you have a Native woman watch her husband get killed, her son get killed, she's gonna tell her daughter, say you are Mexican for sheer survival. During the gold rush, there were bounties on the heads of indigenous people in California. In 1854, the U.S. government paid $5 a head for California Native peoples. The resulting genocide and diseases killed nearly 95% of all California natives by 1880. California, indeed, is a golden state, but reality dictates that the foundation of California, the foundation of this entire country, is built on lives and deaths of Indians. The California mission system forced the Ohlone people into servitude and set the stage for the destruction of our culture. When the Native peoples whom did not like the restrictions at the mission would run away, Indian Canyon served as a safe haven. We are right in the heart of the Gavilan Mountain Range. You have to be very intimate with the area to find the canyon. Cienega Road means swamp. Ohlone people who were able to navigate into the canyon were safe during the bounty era. When I realized the American Indian did not get the right to practice their religion freely until 1978 with the American Indian Religious Freedom Act, and I was horribly upset. And so I opened up my great-grandfather's trust allotment to all indigenous people. whom are in need of traditional lands for ceremony. I am so happy you were here. There are a number of Ohlone descendants that have not healed. There's still anger there. And we have 9 sweat lodges, and I offer them to start participating in ceremony. And I'm watching slowly healing taking place. And for me, that's the reason for living. We still truly respect and honor our ancestors, particularly with all the development that has taken place in San Francisco, in Silicon Valley. Indian Canyon is sacred. You are surrounded by all the natural elements around you. I was born and raised here. My umbilical cord is buried here in this canyon, so I will always be connected. My daughter's umbilical cord is buried here in this canyon. She will always be connected. My mother, Elena, was an extremely proud Native American woman, and she too lived to honor her ancestors. My mother believed when ceremonies stop, so does the earth. I want our mother, the earth, to continue, because when she decides to shake us off, she can do so with no difficulty. Water is the blood of the earth. In our language, water is Rama, and there is no word in the English language that describes the definition of Rama. Rama is just not H2O. It's a movement of the water, it's a sound of the water, it's a creek that contains the water. They are one and inseparable. And if you take the time to listen, you can actually hear the water talk to you, whisper to you. It's just taking the time to listen. 2 years ago, I was one of the initial signatories to get on the ballot so the people can decide if we wanted fracking or not in San Benito County. And it was 16-1 the oil companies spent to every $1 that we were able to raise. And we won. It made national news, and there is no fracking now in San Benito County, which I'm so happy to say. I want to see truth in history. All lenses should be shared, not just a European lens. Non-Native people can learn a lot from the Native peoples that are still alive, that are still living on their lands, in a manner that is respectful.
We have a gesture of reciprocity and respect and altruism. As people of the land, when we give of ourselves, it will come back.
What I find so amazing is the Native peoples coming together, because then you can go forward with success. My daughter went to Standing Rock, and it was truly, truly amazing to see so many different cultures, so many different nations coming together. And that has to continue to go forward.
So I encourage you to pass this around so you can smell it, because it's very, very aromatic.
I would like Indian Canyon to continue the educating the youth. When they connect with the earth, it is magic. I share with them that each and every one of you are going to be in a position that you're going to be making very, very important decisions. Before you make a decision, ask yourself, how will this affect 7 generations in the future? When you answer that question, then make your decision. I love being alive today and seeing all the Native peoples really embrace their culture.
Mishmin Tuhis. Good day. I'm so honored to be here, and I hope you enjoyed In the Land of My Ancestors. I am so happy to be here. I am the daughter of Anne-Marie Sayers, who was just featured by this amazing mini documentary by Rucha Chitnis. And before I start, I do want to encourage you all to let me know where you're calling in or joining in from, since it's digital. Native-land.ca is one interactive map it's very important that we acknowledge that these lines, these territories, are not perfectly accurate given the history of colonization. However, I really recommend that you let me know where you're joining us from. Currently, I am in Tamian Ohlone territory. Tamian Ohlone territory is right in Santa Clara Valley. So for those of you who are in San Jose, I'm nearby. However, I also want to acknowledge that this agreement is with San Francisco. But you know what? Before San Francisco was known as San Francisco, this space was known as Yelamu. If we were gathered in person, I'd invite you all to say it out loud. And I love hearing people say it back. I'm like, can I hear you say Yelamu? Yelamu. Can I hear you say Ramaytush? Ramaytush is the first language of this territory if we were gathered in San Francisco. And there are 8 native languages that span in what we now call Ohlone territory. But as a California Indigenous Two-Spirit community member, I want to ground myself and ground this digital circle by offering a song. And I want to offer a coyote song in my Mutsun Ohlone language. I identify as Mutsun Ohlone Chumash, California Indigenous, with a little bit of Euro mud ancestry, attempting to honor my ancestors to the best of my ability. And part of that is acknowledging Indigenous protocol. Indigenous protocol is accounting for who we are and how we got to where we are. If we are not on the land of our ancestors, then where are we? Well, we are visitors. Whenever I visit other territories, I attempt to learn the history of the land, of the original stewards, and be accountable to the best of my ability. And so what you watched in the land of my ancestors was us sharing a little bit of our culture. And as my mother voiced, and what my grandmother has taught me, when song, ceremony, dancing stops, so does the earth. So I will use my regalia, because Native peoples, we don't wear costumes. I'm going to use my regalia, my medicine, as an instrument and offer a little coyote song to help ground me and help start this off in a good way. So this is a song that's been coming to me and it's still finding its rhythm. So this is reconnection to language. Kanwa smahet se wakshishe. Kanwa smahet se wakshishe. Wakaniskuan hara kanwaskuan. Wakaniskuan hara kanwaskuan. Sawe, 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 sawe. Kanwasmahet se wakshishe. Kanwasmahet se wakshishe. Wakaniskuan hara kanwaskuan. Wakaniskuan hara kanwaskuan. Sawe, 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 sawe. Oh, 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 oh. I invite you all to say, oh, because in our community, it's better than clapping. Because clapping dissipates the energy. And in our community, when we say, oh, it is when we enter and when we leave our roundhouses. It's a way to acknowledge a very powerful quote, a beautiful prayer, a beautiful song. And so I invite you to say, oh, at the end of songs and these kind of prayers. So thank you for taking the time to join us. I love interaction. I love community. And I do want to voice a little bit prefacing how this came about. It's so very important that we honor this legacy. And my mother's legacy has been always to honor her ancestors. And that story, this documentary would not exist had community not come together. Both community not come together with my mother and in her efforts of reattaining the land of her ancestors on, more legal front versus Indigenous stewardship and accountability. It's always been in our family. We've always taken care of the land. But community coming together. And for the photojournalist, Rucha Chitnis, who is an amazing artist and who allowed this to be given this vital breath of life. So I'm deeply appreciative of Rucha and our community who comes together and how we can, honor the past to shape the future. So when it comes to the future, my mother did voice in the documentary that she wants to have the legacy be honored by keeping the land open for all Indigenous people in need of land for ceremony and for the next generation, for the youth, for education. And as her daughter, as an up and coming steward of I'm already a steward of the land, but I mean, up and coming leader within our small community, I have a lot of responsibilities to the canyon and to the communities that I serve. And with that, I have many beautiful ideas for the canyon, and it's continuing exactly what we've always been doing. We've been stewarding the land in traditional fashions. We've been connecting community, bridging communities, and making sure that Indigenous peoples have the opportunity to be on the land and to have ceremony and celebrate in song and dance. And educational outreach is pivotal. My business, Kanyon Consulting, I started to bridge that gap to talk about that whole movement, JEDI, justice, equity, diversity, and inclusion, but with an Indigenous lens. Because my mother, she has changed laws. She's influenced legal protocols around protecting sacred sites and cultural resources. She's influenced so many amazing community members and has afforded me these opportunities to be present and learn from my community. And so I am very blessed and I'm very privileged, both as an Indigenous person who lives on the land of my ancestors and having been brought up in a more traditional and intertribal environment where acknowledging Indigenous protocol is a fundamental, where there is not development on our land, where there are roads, where there are buildings, where there's just people assuming what is needed and necessary without ever consulting the Indigenous peoples. Indigenous protocol is coming humbly and respectfully, seeking permission to be there. And I was brought up in that environment. I recognize that that's a privilege and a blessing. And so as a 21st century Indigenous community member, I want to voice that all of us have privileges. So I encourage some questions because I have some questions coming in here just to acknowledge it. Anne Marie is my mother. Today is the best time for an Ohlone person to be alive since contact. And a lot of people love. What feels possible now that did not before? What shifts do you think we will see in the future and how are they connected in Ohlone land? Well, I'm excited to announce that something is coming into existence that I've been voicing the need for, and it's MORs. If any of you are familiar with the acronym MOU, Memorandum of Understanding, and MOA, Memorandum of Agreement, well then, MOR, Memorandum of Recognition. Can you imagine, like right now, land acknowledgements are getting to be popular, but what is land acknowledgements if someone doesn't actually account for where they are? Oh, I have to acknowledge the land because everybody else is doing it. Please, if that's your reason, don't do it. To acknowledge the land is to actually take into account where it is we are, how is it that we are here, and in what ways can we come together and be in community. And that also means to be in community with not only human to human or human to animal or living being, but all sacred living systems. To be accountable to our actions and words, impact not only ourselves, our environment, but the next 7 generations. And that's in the short run. That means sometimes saying no to the quarter end dividends. And so as a child, I never really understood that quote that my mother gave. I didn't get it. And now as an adult, I'm sitting here like, since contact, today is the best day to be alive. And I think I'm feeling lucky enough to say, I look forward to saying that tomorrow and the next days. It's getting a little iffy, you know. However, things that are happening are amazing. I see my relatives consulting government to government. I'm seeing my relatives share perspective and shifting curriculum. The California History Curriculum Coalition, on my website, there are many resources, and I'm seeing these amazing books. I'm seeing these amazing resources and educational outreach materials, both of curriculum and of recommended reading lists. And it's so exciting because, let me just tell you, when I was 5 years old, a little boy said, "If you're Indian, you're dead." Am I mad at him for not knowing? Or am I mad at his parents for not teaching him how to be a respectful community member? Am I mad at his teacher for not teaching him truth? Oh, we have gravity. Apologies to that. There's gravity. And so when I'm trying to think about sharing the things that are possible and the things that are able to happen, it's a matter of acknowledging that anything is possible. Anything is possible because we have the ability to make that happen. We have the ability to, I don't know, bring into our schools a outdoor curriculum where teachers actually, well, have cultural competent approaches to our outreach. I'm using cultural competency as a thing because so many times there happen to be teachers who influence the next generation, and they will put us in the past tense. They will say, Ohlone people were here, they used to be here, they did this, they did that. And I understand that if someone has not met Indigenous peoples, that by putting us in the past tense, it's the only thing that they know how to navigate, but it's problematic because it's engaging in cultural erasure. So I want to voice this because curriculum is so very important. It's important because it's how we impact our communities. And if we're constantly saying the Ohlone people are gone, they were here, if we're only romanticizing Native peoples in the past sense, and if we're only acknowledging, well, pan-Indianism, it's a problem. So can you talk about the connection between Ohlone communities in the Bay Area? And if there are connections on how you are working on land rights? Well, let's see here. Ohlone communities and Bay Area connections. All right, so many Indigenous peoples, as the video mentioned, Indian Canyon is the only federally recognized Indian country. Many Ohlone people happen to be landless on Native land. And it's troublesome because we're priced out of our Bay Area territory. We're priced out of our own homelands, and it is troublesome. Can you help him, please? I'm on a live stream, and I have a family emergency. This is troublesome. Oh my God. This is interesting. I might need to leave this in a little bit because of this family emergency. However, I do want to point out that as an Indigenous person who has always fought in regards to just saying that I exist, that I'm alive, that I have to lean to problematic documentation, such as the proof of gendercide in the missions, to validate that my existence as a Two-Spirit community member is real. The trouble that so many people say, well, why aren't the Ohlone people federally recognized? Where are they? Why aren't they here? Why don't you look up what has made us illegal? To this day, it's illegal being Indigenous. We cannot harvest or collect our cultural resources. We cannot be ourselves traditionally. We cannot tend the land with using our traditional methods, such as fire. We're deemed illegal on an ongoing basis. And people don't want to be accountable to how their privileges and their presence in today's Western settler colonial environment has contributed to that. I'm not a Native person who's going to say, go back to the country of your origin, but I am going to say, can we be accountable to truth and history? As a mixed individual, I come from many nations. At the same time, I will educate and raise awareness of how Western settler colonialism has played a role in teaching us to be capitalistic, materialistic, engage in a disposable society model, which this entitled affluent behavior is a mindset that's so pervasive and so problematic that our own relatives replicate this behavior. So it's not a white versus brown, a black versus red, a black versus white issue. It happens to be a mentality, a behavior, and an issue. And so I want to point this out, that we can get beyond this behavior. We can get beyond this mindset by being accountable, by honoring truth and history. And so I hope you can learn a little bit more about the rights of nature. I hope you can learn about the United Nations Declaration of the Rights of Indigenous People. I hope you can take the time to support local Indigenous communities. After all, if we were gathered in person, the Association of Ramaytush Ohlone peoples are the active community in Yalama. And it's so very important that we just honor truth and history. I have a family emergency to tend to. I am deeply apologetic that I have to cut this a little short, but guess what? You can follow our social media handles. In the Land of My Ancestors is on Facebook. Kanyon Consulting, I'm ready and willing to collaborate. And so on Instagram, on Facebook. So deep appreciations, and you're so awesome. And I'm glad to be here. And Tomsanak, Hanis, in my language, that means thank you. And may we honor and acknowledge missing and murdered Indigenous women. And I can tell a better story about that later. So I hope you can reach out to me. Thank you, everyone. Deep apologies.
Thank you so much to Kanyon Sayers-Roods and the entire Association of Ramaytush Ohlone. It has been such an honor to work with you. For more information about upcoming programs, exhibitions, and all the wonderful things happening at the museums, please check out our website and make sure you book your tickets in advance, tickets.famsf.org. Thank you so much for joining us tonight, and we hope to see you next time.